situation where you find that a person look like the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that. But in a situation where you find that a person look like the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
Welcome back to Daybreak on Trust TV. Right now, we're going to take a look at the front pages of the newspapers this morning, and we'll start with Daily Trust newspaper. This is the major headline on the front page. At parley with candidates, CAN sets agenda for Tinubu, Atiku, others. And riders here to say key things Buhari's successor must do, according to the CAN president, and why I didn't pick Christian running mate, according to Tinubu. Details of that can be found on page 4. Still on the front page of Daily Trust, drunken soldier crushes army general to death in Lagos barracks. That story can be found on page 8. Senate backs CBN Naira redesign policy, and a sad one here, 11-year-old maid tortured by employer dies in Jos. Details of that can be found on page 10. At the very bottom of the front page there, 7 years after aviation roadmap mired in controversies, delays. More details that can be found on page 3. Towards the top of the front page, below the name plates, PDP crisis, G5 demands equity in reconciliation moves, and we won't pay ASU for work not done, FG insists. Details of that can be found on page 6. And not to forget, for 11 schoolgirls of FGC Benin Yauri are still in captivity 518 days later, and of course one student of Bethel Baptist High School Kujama has been in captivity for 491 days. Now these are the major headlines on the front page of Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
Okay, let's take a look at some more stories on the Punch newspaper this morning. The lead story there says Muslim ticket, friends criticizing me, lobbied for vice president slot. This is according to Tinubu. That story is on page 2 on the Punch this morning. And some of the riders there you can see Tinubu meets CAN, says he didn't Islamize his family. Can't do such to Nigeria. Nigeria needs religiously neutral state, not a religious state. Association advises federal government. Next president must ensure a good balance between Muslims, Christians. This is according to an association, and you see a picture there that shows the officials of the Lagos State Task Force during a raid on commercial motorcycle operators at Abule Egba, Lagos on Wednesday. You'd find other stories on the Punch this morning. Federal government ASU begin fresh showdown. Minister tackles lecturers. And then you see the story about Naira redesign, targets looted funds, EFCC chair. Government planning bank guarantees for Nigeria-Ethiopia deal. And you'd find other stories as well. Surrender mandates if APC loses, parties tell Buhari. And on page 5 on the Punch this morning, you see a very disturbing story about 11 cultists nabbed for terrorizing Lagos neighborhood. And you see the story about APC, IU disagree over bid to win Lagos. These are the major stories on the Punch this morning.
All right, next we'll take a look at the Nation newspaper, and still keeping with what we have seen in other papers, it carries this major story on the front page. Tinubu, I'm not seeking office on religious grounds. And the rider here that says APC presidential candidate meets CAN, the Christian body presents charter of demands. And going down the front page there, federal government insists on no work, no pay for ASU members. Rivers won't vote for president along party lines, says Wike. And the rider here that says G5 lists equity, justice, fairness as conditions for truce. At the very bottom of the front page there, security operatives take over Ekiti Assembly, and court rejects Maina's bail application. And at the very top of the front page, World Bank okays $13.5 million financing plan for Nigeria. Details of that can be found on page 5. Buhari approves 134.7 billion naira for military veterans. That is on page 6. And tribunal compels INEC to release Adeleke's certificates. UK government launches $100 million scheme to lift women. Details of that can be found on page 9. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of the Nation newspaper this morning.
Okay, let's take a look at some more stories in the Guardian newspaper this morning. CSOs seek sanctions against underage voting, duplication in INEC register, and that is just slightly below the 99 days to election page. Development not surprising, erring staff will be sanctioned. INEC vows don't make Nigeria a problem for West Africa. Electoral Forum chair warns politicians. AACSI 2023 poll test of Nigeria's democratic strength. You find other stories as well. Atiku faults APC's lopsided appointments, says PDP will form government of national unity. Declining sperm count raises human extinction concerns. That story is on page 4 on the Guardian newspaper this morning. And gunmen slay 9 family members in Plateau State. That's a tragic story, and you can find the details of that story on page 9. 2 Nigerian athletes face 10-year jail terms in US for wire mail fraud. Federal government, ASU face-off. Government wouldn't pay for service not rendered, minister insists. And on page 6 on The Guardian this morning, finally, Tinubu meets Khan, Ale's same faith ticket fears. And then we see the story about crisis looms in Ekiti House of Assembly 24 hours after election of new speaker. These are the major stories on The Guardian this morning.
All right, and that wraps up the newspaper review, or should I say, revealing out the headlines on the newspapers this morning. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll take a deep dive and analyze these headlines with our reviewer this morning. So do stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that they look like the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
because I have said that.
Welcome back, and right now we are going to take a deep dive into analyzing the headlines this morning, and with us in the studio we have the editor-in-chief, Dateline Nigeria newspaper, and that is Nasrullah. Morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Daybreak.
Thank you. Good
Always
morning.
nice to have you here.
Yeah, always good to be here.
All right, absolutely fantastic. Well, let's dive straight into it, shall we? One of the major stories that we're actually seeing, of course, is a political one. So there's no surprise there. Tinubu visited, had a parley with Khan, and lots of issues were actually raised, most especially the Muslim ticket thing. But a lot of people are actually saying, or still bringing it to the fore right now, that does he mean that there's actually no competent non-Muslim from the north that he could actually take, or something like that? What's your take on the entire Tinubu-Khan parley?
Well, I think it's a good one, and it's a remarkable, actually, departure from the position that Khan was taken in the beginning. Because if I remember, in July, they rejected it outrightly to say that the Christian Association of Nigeria will not support same-faith ticket. But now that they are coming, to interface, with all the candidates, I think they will be able to hear directly from the candidates themselves. Sometimes when you have intermediaries, that's when you begin to hear things that are not necessarily true, or probably they need some explanations. And the presidential candidate of the APC actually tried to explain how he had to arrive at the decision to nominate Kashim Shettima as his running mate, even though they belong to the same religion. And he also tried to explain the fact that most of the people that are actually, at the forefront, against the ticket. You know, he said some of them actually wanted to be considered for the position of vice president, and that they are taking that position simply because they have failed in their bid to actually get the position for themselves. So I think it's a good thing that the candidates are now interfacing, and I will want to encourage all other stakeholders, you know, to try as much as possible to see how they can hear directly from these candidates, so that all the things that they are not clear with will be cleared and explained to them in a way that they will understand.
Now, the issue about religion, particularly in a country like Nigeria, is a very sensitive topic. Now, as a measure of our democracy, a lot of people have been saying, well, it's not about which religion you come from, but the competence of the individual or the candidate that is vying for that office. Will there ever come a time where we're going to look just beyond what religion you come from, you know, to choose or to elect anybody to office?
That's my prayer, because actually what is fueling all these controversies, as far as I can see, is the fact that our leaders have not been able to do what they're elected to do. You know, as a leader, you're expected to ensure justice, you know, to those that you belong to the same religion, and even those that profess a different religion from the one that you practice. So if the leaders can actually do what they are supposed to do, you know, we need development. If they're able to bring that, believe me, all these differences that we tend to hear from time to time, they will begin to take the back seat. But as it is, you know, somebody who has not had maybe his breakfast, you know, you will see him arguing that he wants somebody from his own religion to be the president. How does that help you? Certainly not in any way. But if the leaders are able to put, you know, all the right things, you know, in the right places, we wouldn't be talking about all this. If you see what is happening in developed democracies, for instance, most of the things that they talk about, you know, they talk about taxes, you know, they talk about things that we consider maybe unimportant. And that has to do with the level of our development. So if our politicians will do what is expected of them, you know, ensure justice, because as the nation is, as we are currently structured, there are places where you have maybe one religion being predominant, you know, dominating the other. But even in those places, a leader is expected to lead with justice. Absolutely. You know, to treat people equally, you know, not because of the religion that they profess or the ethnic group that they belong to. Just do what you are expected to do. And some people say that's why we need restructuring. And I don't think that's the case, because our laws are as they are actually enough to ensure our development, but we don't respect the laws. We don't respect things that we push forward, you know, without anybody like coming to influence them. Because when we agreed to come up with the 1999 Constitution, which is still in practice today, nobody said we should do that. But if we don't respect the Constitution, then there is little or nothing that we can achieve as it is.
Oh, okay, all right. Just before we move on from that, I actually have something I would like us to look at. We had an election in 1993 where religion really wasn't an issue. It wasn't even brought up. We focused on the issues, we had an election, and everything went the way it went. All these years down the line, now religion has become a centerpiece of what the election is probably all about. Is it, have we de-evolved, so to speak? Because I thought we were supposed to go from being having religious sentiments towards not having it. But we seem to have devolved from being cautious to what we are now. Do you think we can re-evolve again and get to where we need to get?
Certainly we can, and the fact that we are like taking steps backward rather than forward, I think I should blame the politicians for all this, because if the people, you know, as far back as 1993, were able to forget about all these religious differences and what have you, to elect a president, then it means that the politicians are actually the ones that are reintroducing all these differences simply because they want to get to maybe the position that they are aspiring for. So without doing that, then honestly there will be lots of things that we'll just be seeing, without making any headway. So just like Nigerians did in 1993, I believe our leaders should be able to discuss issues, say what they are interested in doing, and then allow the people to decide. Because if we keep saying, I want to become the president because of my faith, or I want to become a senator because of the people that where I come from and things like that, then it's not going to help anyone. Because if you think you are a majority, you are part of the majority somewhere, you are certainly among the minorities somewhere. So, but when you do what is right, when you do what is expected of you, then you are like clear without any problem.
Well, I hope we move past this someday.
Yes.
Now, another very important issue that is almost on every page on our dailies this morning is the tussle between ASU, and the federal government. They are still saying we wouldn't pay ASU for work not done. Federal government is still insisting, but some are saying this is contradicting the ILO, as if workers are protesting for something, they should still be paid during that time. What are your assertions about this?
Well, even ASU, the argument that they are making is the fact that we deal with syllabus, the semesters and what have you. So all the semesters that we have missed, we're actually going back, to cover them. So like getting our salaries is just like expected. And probably the government withheld that information during the dialogue. Maybe they didn't tell them that even if you suspend the strike, we are actually not going to pay you for the months that you have been out of the classroom. So the government should always be clear, so that probably if ASU had known this, they wouldn't have suspended the strike. So I see this as an ambush by the government, and then it's also not good for somebody who is like trying to reconcile. It doesn't help reconciliation in any way. Let them come and agree, on how best to go about this. Because even Nigerians actually expected that to happen when ASU agreed to return to the classroom. So many Nigerians believe that all their allowances and salaries and what have you will actually be paid to them.
All right, well, let's move slightly away from that and talk about the economy. The Senate, after a rowdy session, very, very rowdy session, finally agreed to back the CBN's decision to redesign the Naira. And we heard the chairman of the EFCC saying that will help with strengthening the Naira, and that the Naira can come back to 200 Naira to $1 or something like that. What is your general perspective on this particular redesign? Is it something that we actually need right now? And does the Senate backing make any difference?
Well, even the Deputy Senate President who presided over yesterday's session actually said it, that the CBN has the mandate, Senate backing or no backing, that they have the mandate to do this. And even the EFCC chairman also said that this is something that, was supposed to be done every 10 years, but that we have gone like 20 years without doing it, more than 20 years without doing it. But like you said, this is not what Nigerians want to hear. How will the redesign of the Naira actually bring food to the table of the common man? That's what people are about. And if you see the argument that was made at the Senate, like the senator from Borno, Ali Ndume, said, in the whole of Borno state, they have 27 local governments. Right now, they have only 5 commercial banks operating in that state. And if you look at the time that the CBN is given Nigerians to be able to, replace, deposit your old currency and what have you, it may not be enough. So that's why some are saying, why don't you maybe extend it to April 30th instead of just saying at the end of January, so that you will allow Nigerians to be able to, do this without any problem. And then some of the senators actually said, why should we even consider bringing the the CBN governor to this house? Because all the times that we have invited him in the past, he has shunned us. So why should we be talking about inviting him now? And that was actually what led to the rowdy session. So sometimes you wonder what our senators are actually thinking, because if you look at the challenges that we have, like we are approaching the 2023 elections, we are still talking about insecurity, we are still talking about INEC offices being attacked, and then nobody is even, well, maybe they are not giving the right attention to it. Probably they are discussing it in their circles, but certainly not in the news. And if it is in the news, then I must have missed it along with so many other people. So I think Naira redesign, well, they said it's good. Like what the EFCC chairman said, I don't think that has anything to do with economics. Probably it's his own thinking that when you do this, automatically something will result therefrom. I don't think it's possible, because if that were to be the case, then you will have seen so many countries redesigning their currencies anytime they have economic challenges. It's good, maybe from his own understanding, it will actually help his mandate, which is very good for you to understand what will help you in achieving your objectives. But for you to say doing it will automatically, help the economy, I don't think that is backed by any evidence.
Well, talking about tussles, I'm really glad this time around we're not seeing blows and fights
and cheers flying around.
moving around. Okay, now let's move away slightly from that. On the Guardian newspaper, civil society organizations are seeking sanctions against underage voting duplication in INEC register. Do you think INEC is ready to explicitly look at this time?
No, I think what we should be talking about is whether INEC even has the capacity to do that. Like at the point of registering, maybe you need something that will show that whoever is coming out to register, is actually eligible. We now have NIN, we have so many things that, can show you exactly the age that people are, even if it is claiming, at least it should be backed by some record. But right now, you wonder how 15, 14, year-olds get away with so many things. It's not only voters card that we're having issues with. Even driving licenses, you see small boys, with how were they able to get it? So this is, it's good that the civil societies are, raising this, bringing it back to the front burner so that we take a look at it. But whoever violates the law, I think we have agencies that are responsible for, is it prosecution or what have you. It's not necessarily the job of INEC to do all that. Because even if we are expecting INEC to do that, I don't think they have the capacity to be able to do that. But now with technology, removing multiple or double registration is much easier, instead of what used to obtain in the past. So, like I said, those who are responsible for applying the sanctions should be given the go-ahead to do that. INEC, what I expect INEC to do is to try as much as they can not to do this. And then what are we even having the voters register, voter cards for? It's because we have not been able to come up with a credible birth registration processes and what have you. If you have valid forms of identification, you may not even need any voters register, because it is only when you are 18. The law is clear on that. It's only when you are 18 that you will be eligible to vote and maybe even be voted for. But this one that you will require so different cards to do different things, honestly, we should begin to look away from that to see how we can, because at least it will even, you know, reduce the amount of resources that we are expending unnecessarily on all these issues.
Well, still on that, you just touched on it a little bit. Do you think we're paying the required attention to having a central database? I mean, like we have the NIN database, we have the BVN, we have the voters register, everything everywhere. but with the kind of technology that we actually have in the world right now, wouldn't it be easy for us to say, okay, let's concentrate on harmonizing this and having one central database that we can actually call a Nigerian database? Would that make things easier?
Certainly it will make things easier, but you know, I don't know why our agencies, our ministries and other institutions are working at cross purposes. Like you said, you know, one institution, one agency should be able to harmonize all these things, but probably because there is something that they get when they keep all this information to themselves. Maybe that's why they are all like gung-ho about all these issues. But why do we need all that? Maybe a road safety officer, for instance, should be able to access your database from Lagos, you know, wherever he is.
Anywhere.
Wherever he is. It doesn't have to be, no, this thing, well, you have to go to Kaduna for you to be able to do that. Or no, this information, you have to contact the NIMC to be able to get this. Honestly, we should go beyond that, because these are government agencies and they are working for the same government. Then why all the differences?
You know, when we first started the NIN registration, at some point they told us that, okay, when you do the registration, you can link it with, you can use it as an ATM card, and then so many other things.
They want to link it with your driving license, your international passport and everything.
Stalled. I don't know what happened.
You know, sometimes all these issues, you know, they look at the contract part of it. You know, maybe by doing away with all this, then you will be denying some people, you know, the ports where they eat from. So it's a serious problem. We should be able to do the needful, and that is to have one common database which everybody can have access to.
All right. Well, let's hope we get there.
Yeah.
All right. So still sticking with the Guardian newspaper, there's a bit of news there that actually I think snuck under the radar. They're talking about declining sperm count now, which is threatening human extinction. A couple of days ago, we actually talked about the human population, the world population reaching 8 billion. There were lots of concerns. 8 billion.
That's huge.
It's a huge number with declining resources, climate change, and the rest of it. Are we getting anywhere? And now we're hearing that sperm count is low generally, and it's threatening human extinction. Is that not a contradiction to what we've actually looked at?
I wouldn't see it as a contradiction, because, you know, like all these global bodies, like the United Nations, the World Health Organizations, and what have you, what they see as a challenge, you know, it may not be the same with what people in developing countries, you know, or underdeveloped countries are actually seeing. We are still talking about people, you know, bragging about the number of children that they have in so many of our climes, like in Africa. Only recently in Kaduna, there was this young man that was, you know, all over the news because he had 19 children. He had, you know, as if that is
an achievement.
You know, so the contradiction there, you are talking about the fact that the world is already 8 billion people strong, and then you are faced with a declining sperm count. So I think that should call for celebration. That should call for celebration, because if you are worried about the number of people that, then the ability to have them is also declining. Then you
yes.
should
So that's
celebrate
good
it.
news, I guess.
Yeah, but you know, sometimes they talk about all these issues on the average. Like if you go to most of these European countries, people are no longer having kids at all. Even at the tip of my finger, I can count a number of countries where you have either the president or the prime minister, you know, is someone that has no kid at all.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's like different from what obtains here.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the difference. And they're talking about even having the replacement rate, you know, for a man and maybe his partner to be able to have like a good replacement. You need at least 3 children, which is no longer the case in most of these European nations and other developed countries. So when that happens, then you should worry about what is happening in underdeveloped countries, because people are just having kids, you know, all over the place, including the ones that they are not even sure of how
they can take care of them.
They can take care of them. And maybe our family support programs, and what do you even call them? Maybe we need to do more on that aspect, so that people will know, should know, that having kids that you can cater for is actually the best.
Very, very important.
But right now we are putting unnecessary pressure in all the things that, like just yesterday I was reading, was it? No, on Monday, I was reading the back page of the Daily Trust, talking about the fact that in the early 80s, you had like 20 universities and more than enough for all Nigerians. Now you have more than 200, and we're still battling,
struggling to get
admissions all over the place. So honestly, we should worry about the pressure that we are putting on
the available resources.
The available resources that we have.
Quite very interesting. Now, there are other very interesting stories still on the Guardian newspaper. We are seeing that 2 Nigerian athletes face 10 years jail terms in US for wire and mail fraud. Why do we always have to come out in negative light? It's disturbing.
It's very unfortunate, because you will think those who are, you know, athletes, international athletes, you know, should be able to live somehow comfortable lives, you know. But for you to be engaged in, or accused, let's say accused for now, in things like this, honestly, it doesn't speak well of, because people see you as a role model. And if this is what you do, then it also means you are looking for the easy way out. So maybe all the efforts that you put in, you know, doing your training, following the routine and what have you, only for you to end up in a jail simply because you wanted to have, you know, your greed actually pushed you into that. Honestly, it's unfortunate. And the fact that, you know, it's having a negative effect on the country that they come from, it's also another thing. So Nigeria should worry, especially those who are responsible for the image of the country, whether it's within or outside the country, to be able to take all this national orientation and issues very importantly, so that things like this will not keep happening. All
right. Well, talking about things that should not happen, let's pivot back to politics, because whatever it is we discuss, we still have to come back to it. There's a bit of a crisis brewing in the Ekiti State House of Assembly. There was an election to elect a speaker, and then all of a sudden, lots of mudslinging is going around, and a certain crisis. Is that a good thing for the polity?
No, but it's not a good thing, but then it's also normal. Normal in the sense that, you know, they recently had a new governor. And this governor will want to have his own people, you know, manning all the institutions, you know, of authority, so that he will not be faced with challenges, or he will not be like teleguided by somebody who is no longer in charge. Because it is to be expected that the speaker and then maybe the principal officers of the Ekiti House of Assembly were probably helped to their position by the former governor.
Yes.
Now that you have a new governor in town, He also wants to have his own people so that he will be able to push his agenda without being distracted. That's why I said it's not a good thing, but then it's normal with
and
Nigerian
it's
politics.
expected.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that is a good note to end the newspaper analysis this morning on the Daybreak. Nasruddin, always a pleasure to have you here. Absolutely amazing.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you so much for coming quite very, very early
Very
this
early.
morning.
Thank you.
Early
Well, it's
indeed.
because I actually live around. So
Really, he was actually an early bird, and I
Yeah.
think that deserves commendation. So thank you very much
Thank you too.
for your time.
Thank you.
All right, it's still Daybreak on Trust TV. We'll take a short break, and when we return at the top of the hour, the show continues. Just
The situation where you find that a person look like the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that. But in a situation where you find that a person look like the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.